Welcome to the 7th episode of A Change Is a Chance. Presently, we as global citizens are going through so much. The pandemic, global warming, and within the U.S., economic and racial injustices. So much we all need to learn and act on to help heal humanity. By interviewing different experts, I hope that I am educating listeners, especially young listeners like me, on the issues in this world. I am also really happy to report that my listenership has quintupled in the last episode, thanks to the support of Plastic Free July. It is really giving me the encouragement to keep doing this and hopefully make a small difference. Now please allow me to proudly introduce my 7th guest. Over the last 2 months, we have seen the tipping point, maybe, in racial injustices and inequalities. The murder of George Floyd has revived the Black Lives Matter movement, making it truly global, across cities big and small. Even here in my hometown, we have had several rallies. The topic of race and anti-racism needs to be on everyone's mind, and sometimes it is difficult to discuss race. My guest, Dave Smith, is here to give his perspective on the race relations in the U.S. Mr. Smith is a technology research analyst and the founder of Inflow Analysis. He is known as Wiz, a rapper with music on iTunes. You should listen to his latest song, We Need You Now, which he's written after the world erupted upon seeing the videos of George Floyd's death. It was emotional and beautiful. Mr. Smith's LinkedIn article called Uncomfortable Conversation about his experiences growing up as a Black American really caught my attention. He's here to talk to us about his experiences, the BLM movement, and this uncomfortable conversation around race that we need to bring to the forefront. I am proud to welcome Mr. Smith to the show. How are you today, Mr. Smith?
Hi, Ryan. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're doing well during the long shelter in place.
Oh yeah, we are coping here. We're coping.
Just doing the best we can.
Exactly.
Allow us to get into the questions now. What inspired you to write, play, and launch your song, We Need You Now?
Wow. So that was basically, as you were saying before, my response to everything that was going on. Right after the killing of George Floyd, that sparked nationwide and global protests. I was sort of inspired by this gospel song called "It Will All Be Over," and just realizing that the moment was so huge, right? That we needed strength and help, to get through and overcome from the universe, God, whatever higher power you believe in, you want to sort of draw on that universal strength, sort of get through. So that's sort of what inspired the song. Just everything that was going on after the killing of George Floyd, and seeing the protest and the reaction and the response globally.
Well, thanks for sharing your feelings and your thoughts. What was going through your head as you saw the BLM movement take over the country and then the globe? What do you hope to be a lasting outcome?
My first thought was it was way past time. We've been sort of talking about injustices for so long. So, we've had this rich history of social and racial justice movements in this country. But what I think we witnessed after George Floyd was killed was a different energy with Black Lives Matter movement. And I think watching the George Floyd incident on TV, now that most people were home due to COVID-19 and shut down and shelter in places, everyone was sort of faced with having to watch it, right? There's no way that you can escape it, the visual of the injustice, done to that man. So it was a catalyst more than anything, I think, more than anything that we've ever seen or I've ever seen in this country. And I said, what I hope comes out of it is real systemic reform, in our laws and in our policies, and in fixing the systemic racism and the injustices, that's sort of been prevalent in this country and in its systems.
This really was way overdue, and
Indeed.
At least now it's all coming back together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's go back a bit to when you were younger. As I said before, in your LinkedIn post titled Uncomfortable Conversation, you talked about your experiences growing up. What have been some of your most notable experiences where you have been judged by the color of your skin? Why do you think that still happens today to Black youth?
Wow, I tell you, It's unconscious, Ryan. It's something that I don't think when people are engaged in those sorts of behaviors, judging people based on their skin, their ethnicity, it's sometimes unconscious. They don't even know they're doing it sometimes, but so people don't even realize they're judging you, right? Or being racist. So what happens to me and other young Black youths is, and acceptance of it. We've been so used to that we've now sort of accepted it, right? And then trying to just navigate it, just how do you just live normal and just sort of not just ignore, but just accept it and just keep on with life as normal. But like I mentioned in the article, I faced racism, from elementary school, high school, even in my professional career, as an adult. And it goes from getting followed around in department stores because they think that you're up to no good. It's the white lady in the mall parking lot that as you walk by her car, she rolls up all the windows and locks her doors. It's Black people, sort of, we see it clearly. And sometimes if you mention those things, people are like, that doesn't happen. It does happen. It happens all the time. But it's those subtle things that we see every day that sort of builds up our mentality. But hey, we just have to accept it and keep on going. But yeah, it's still prevalent in society today.
This is the sad reality, and more people need to know.
Indeed. And so the system, as we're seeing it now, it was sort of set up, to not recognize people of color, as sort of whole people. So it's not something that the system is broken. It sort of was built, this way.
I strongly agree. And now, as an adult, you are in a profession that is predominantly white as well. Do you think that type of judgment continues into the professional world? And do you have any recent experiences to share?
Absolutely. I mentioned in the article you referenced as a young analyst, starting out in my career, a senior or an older white analyst suggested that in order for me to sort of get taken more seriously, to fit in, he suggested that I get start wearing clear glasses. Now, I don't wear prescription glasses at all, but he's like, I know you don't wear prescription glasses, but just so you can seem a little bit more astute and older, and smarter, start wearing glasses. And so what he was saying was that I wasn't enough. He was saying that who I was as a person just wasn't enough, that in order for me to fit in with him, to be accepted by him and others, that I had to do this thing that wasn't me. And so, those are things that I've been seeing in my, professional career, and, it's sad that it still happens today, but it's the reality that we're almost, I guess, all dealing with as people of color.
Thank you for sharing that. We all need to know how others feel.
Absolutely.
How have you stood up to racism besides your amazing song? And how did you tell your kids to stand up to discrimination?
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's thanks for the compliment. It's hard. It's having those hard conversations, with them. I remember my daughter, like just a few years ago in elementary school, I remember this young white kid, told her, you're Black, you're just a slave, I can own you, and I mean, it was in school. This happened in school. And this was around fourth or fifth grade. And I had to have that conversation with her because, here's something that I remember dealing with as a young kid, growing up and thinking things, and I know, things haven't changed as much, but thinking, it'll be better for her in school, that I had to have this deep conversation with her about racism and that there's some people that don't like you just because of the color of your skin. So with my kids, I'm having to actually have that conversation again and teaching them that you still will have to go through some things. My son, he's 8 now. I'm nervous. He can't play with like a toy gun on the front lawn or water gun because I don't want him to be mistaken as, having some sort of weapon, and get mistreated. So, I mean, those are the real fears that us as Black parents have right now.
This really needs to be addressed right now.
Indeed.
What do you recommend for non-Black Americans who want to be part of the solution? I believe in always standing up against what is wrong and being very vocal. But what more can I do?
I think that's the first step. And so it's going to take, just the first step is just the wanting to do something, right? And it's going to take getting an understanding of what the issues are and the history of racism and social injustices, to marginalized groups of people in this country. A part of the problem, I think is, they don't teach this in the school system, right? That's another symptom of systemic racism where, so I recommended in the article a couple books to start with. The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin and How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. So it's really doing the education first. And I think what you're doing right now is the most awesome thing. You want to learn and you want to get involved. And I think that's the first step.
Thank you. And I'll make sure that I read some more books.
Indeed.
What do you want our federal government to do to help break down systemic racism?
I think, like I mentioned before, education is going to be, I think, the key, and it's looking at the laws and policies that negatively affect, Black people and people of color, and fixing the structural issues. School curriculums, like I mentioned before, have to address the real history of America. Kids need to learn about incidents like the Tulsa massacre, at Black Wall Street, and the wave of similar massacres, done by whites to Blacks in this country. Issues around fairer housing laws, equal pay, in professional careers, addressing policing in Black neighborhoods, sometimes just over policing, and also, where Black youths are being negatively impacted by that, what else is there, and so it's the whole system just needs to be overhauled, and because again, the system was actually made this way, it's not broken, it was made this way. So how do you overhaul a system that was built to be this way? And that's the hard work that I think needs to happen right now. And so we're seeing a lot of things starting to happen in the country because of the George Floyd massacre and killing, where there's a lot more attention now being placed on it. We're seeing a lot more movement now within the Congress and the government to even to start talking about it is a success, So, but now we have to sort of continue through and make sure that we drive home, the real issues and drive home change.
I agree. It will take the government to start from talking about it all the way to making these big laws that defend us.
Absolutely. You're right. You're so right.
How can my generation fight against racism right now and in the future?
Ryan, I tell you, I'm so proud of you, like, by what you're doing right now, using this platform you have, bringing up tough conversation like this. This is a start. This is, I think, the one thing that you're doing, and it heartens me, to see you doing this as a young man, and it gives me hope for you and your generation because you're using this platform to bring a conversation that's tough to have. Adults aren't having this conversation. So you as a young man bringing this conversation up and using your platform in this way is exemplary. So again, so proud of you. I got to tell you, I was not expecting you to ask these sort of questions. I'm like, whoa, these are adult and strong questions. So thanks for asking these questions, because it gives us a chance to sort of get into, in a little bit of a deeper way, some of these issues and start talking about them. But so I think doing what you're doing here, and really is to identify, describe, and to call out systemic racism wherever you see it. So again, using this platform is a start, but you really have to begin to, again, become that anti-racist, right? Where you have to call it out where you see it and begin to push for what is right.
Well, thank you for the compliments earlier. And it's true. We all need to start doing this more. I'll keep making sure to.
Absolutely. You're using the platform wisely. Awesome.
As you said earlier about anti-racist, what does the term mean to you, and how can we make sure that we raise a generation of anti-racists?
Yeah, so the term actually goes back for some decades, but it's sort of been, resurfaced again with people like I mentioned, Ibram X. Kendi, who wrote the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. But it's really about, bringing awareness and what you're doing right now, because you have to actively identify the issue and call for change. You can't sort of sit passively by and let injustice happen, because if you just sit and allow it to happen, that means you're actually racist. So what Ibram X. Kendi was saying in the book was that there's no middle ground. You're either racist or anti-racist. There's no not racist. You have to be anti it. And so being anti it is doing what you're doing right now, using your platform, speaking out, having these conversations, pushing for change in your own way that you can do it. And so that's a big part of And even to actually answer your question before, this is what it is. To everywhere you see racism, injustice, identify it, call it out, and challenge it, right? And doing that in your own way, again, by using this platform or what have you, just raising your voice and using your voice to challenge the stuff, just letting your voice be heard is going to be the key.
I strongly agree that we all have to challenge this.
Absolutely.
Something for the lighter side of this conversation. Can you tell us about your next song?
Yeah, so actually I've been recording a lot of new music. So I have a few things happening. I have another song coming out called Circles and another one called This Is Me. Again, more so my music is a lot about some life issues, things I'm going through, talking about my family and different things like that. So so those two should be coming out really soon. So I will definitely let you know when they're available for listening.
I honestly can't wait to listen.
Absolutely.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you today, Mr. Smith. I learned so much, and I hope that my listeners have too. We need to talk about racism in the society a lot more. Please keep helping the world in your own way.
Thank you so much, and it's been great talking with you as well too. Thank you for using this platform to bring up these deep and important topics. I wanted to definitely make sure drive the point home of that. You using your platform is good, and other young people your age, younger and older, just continue to identify, challenge the status quo, challenge injustice wherever you see it to any marginalized group. Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, just always challenge injustice wherever you see it and speak up and stand up for yourself.
It'll be the least I can do to give back to this planet.
Absolutely.
And well, that's the end of A Change at the Chance, episode 7. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next episode.